Okay.
There we go.
Good. Okay. Well, we still have people joining, but we will go ahead and get started. So I'm Irene Scricky. Most of you probably have heard me on these before. I'm a volunteer with OPH, and my role here is just to keep things moving, and so that Cinder, our trainer, is able to focus and not have to worry about slides and checking questions and all that. So I'll just try to be in that kind of background role. And I think probably many of you I know are regulars with OPH, so you know we have a new trainer. But if you're new, we've had trainers on and off in the past, and Cinder started fairly recently, and we'll be doing some of these calls where she'll do a presentation for a little bit, and then we'll take questions and have a chance to interact with everybody. So Cinder, why don't you go ahead and just let me know when you want me to advance the slide, and I will do so.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Cinder. If you were not on the last call, or if you haven't already talked to me through email or on the phone about an animal that you're working with, welcome. I'm so glad to be here, and I am here for you. I'm at your disposal. So please do, if you have any questions or any issues with any of the animals you're working with, get in touch. I'd love to help. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about rowdy rovers, just dogs who are a little much in the house, maybe don't have great manners, jump and bark, mouth, grab, play with your hands like they're toys, bark and lunge at the end of the leash. And we're just going to go, it's going to be just really basic coverage of different things that you can do, just easy tips and tricks. And if you're having a problem like that with any of the animals, we can go into a little more depth with step-by-step training plans for them if you get in touch and let me know. So, but for right now, we're just going to kind of go through a little bit and talk about it. All right, next slide. Okay, let's talk about settling in time. I think probably many of you know this, but it really is really important that you remind yourself that it can take a good long time for them to settle down and settle into a home, whether it's a foster home or a new adoptive home. They've been through a lot. Some of them are somewhat traumatized, and they really need a chance to settle in, get comfortable, realize that you're not going to put them out on the street tomorrow morning, even if they do have some really obnoxious behavior in the beginning, and get settled and learn what the rules of the house are. You know, if they don't know what you want them to do, they can't do that. So it's really important that you build a structure for them so that they understand how their days are going to be when they're in your home. They need a regular schedule, you know, when we're going to get breakfast, when we're going to get dinner, when we're going to go outside to go to the potty, keeping them confined at the beginning in a smaller space so that they don't have so much opportunity to make bad choices in your home. You want to set everybody up for success by creating a space that they are comfortable in, but that is small enough that they're not going to want to use the bathroom there. It can be an exercise pen. It can be in their crate when you're not supervising directly, like with your eyeballs on the animal. Or you can tether them to you. And planning your potty training time. It's easy to just, you know, for some of us to just open the back door and say, okay, go out and go potty. Well, a lot of dogs who haven't been house trained and haven't lived in houses or have been living in a shelter for a long time are so excited to get outside that they're not going to focus on going to the bathroom. Their first thought is, I'm outside, I'm going to go play. This is going to be really fun. And they're like toddler children, you know, they play, they forget that they need to go potty, and then they come inside and have an accident. So setting them up for success with a business before pleasure plan, take them out on a leash, stand there for a few minutes and just be boring, tell them to go potty and ignore them. You can take them to a spot where you want them to go. And as soon as they go, then you have the party. Then you get to run around the yard, you get to play with toys, you get some treats, you get told what a fabulous, wonderful dog you are. And that way you're also getting them ready for their new homes or your home by getting them to go potty immediately when they go outside. If you teach them to go right away, then in January, when it's icy and dreadful, you can just take them to the door, say, go potty, they'll go potty. You can stand halfway inside the door with your robe on and just get them right back in. So you don't have to stand outside forever or walk for miles and miles and miles until they've picked the perfect blade of grass. So business before pleasure. All right, next slide, please.
Working on it.
Mm-hmm. No rush. You're doing better than I
There we
was.
go. I never know whether it's the cursor, the mouse, or which thing is gonna make it go.
I had to do a presentation for school, and it had to have voice cued slides. That took me longer than doing the research and doing the presentation. I mean, putting it all together, but making the slides work on voice cue was just a nightmare. So jumping. Jumping is a normal behavior for dogs, especially dogs who are short. You know, they're little, they can't see your face. They want to make eye contact. They want to make social contact. So we can avoid the jumping by going in and greeting them directly, like right up to them. Grab the collar with one hand, say, hello, pet, 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 nice to see you. Give some treats, tell them that they're doing a great job. And just make sure that they get that opportunity to greet you without jumping up. We can also teach a sit or a 4 on the floor for approach. And some of the easiest ways to do that is to have someone else hold the dog by the leash or tether the dog to something. We're gonna take a treat, walk toward the dog. If the dog starts to jump up, we're gonna just turn and walk away. And we'll do that multiple times. And you will find that you'll get closer and closer, and they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna do this little paw dance probably, but I'm not gonna jump up. Then you can greet and give treats and tell them they're doing a great job. That's a really great way to teach them to just automatically sit when people approach without any cue. You don't have to tell them to sit, you don't have to do any of that. You just teach them that when somebody's showing up, then they're automatically gonna sit down. And then you can have other people do that as well. You can move on to having new people greet. And they can ask, you know, can I pet your, you can practice with having people come up and say, can I pet your dog? And you say, well, just a moment, make sure that the dog is sitting. And then yes, you can pet the dog and give a treat. You can also teach a stationing behavior, like going to a mat or going to a bed or a specific spot in a room. I like to, because we have many large dogs, I like to teach them to go to their mat on the other side of the room from the front door, because we don't need everybody, we don't need a giant pack of Great Pyrenees and Collies smushed into the doorway when people are trying to come in and out. So if they all go and sit on their respective beds, when people come in, then they can greet everybody and not bowl them over. And actually they can have room to walk through the door without having a dog in the way. It's also nice if you're carrying things or bringing, you know, if you're bringing in groceries, it's nice to be able to send the dog to go sit over there while you are walking and can't see what you're doing. So that's a really great thing to do. And it's pretty easy to do. You can start with just tossing a treat onto the mat and standing, moving closer and closer to the door. And then you can work on opening and closing the door. Pay them for staying on the mat. I can send you step-by-step information for that too, if you want to do that. Some dogs will respond if you turn your back when they're jumping. Others will find that more reinforcing, because sometimes it's the body contact. They want to know that they're in contact with you and getting your attention, whether it's your back or your front. They don't really seem to care. You know, that's really dog dependent. Some dogs are really sensitive about space, and other dogs are just all over. So they just want to know that they can touch you. So if you find that turning your back does not work, I would give up on that pretty quickly and start with, you know, just reaching down and grabbing the collar and petting instead of trying to make that work. You can also leave a leash on or a drag line, and you can step on it. Now, I wouldn't step on it and yank it, but just step so that they're not able to lift up at you. And then give them some attention when they've got 4 on the floor. And you can also, if you have a really large dog, or you're easily knocked over, or you just really don't want the dog leaping on you, and since they do find that reinforcing to be able to jump up, you can start with greeting them from behind a baby gate, or, you know, behind a exercise pen or Dutch door, somewhere that they can't make physical contact, and just keep waiting for them to have the manners that you would like. And sometimes with little dogs, people don't mind if they jump up, but it's really pretty helpful to get them comfortable with being 4 on the floor at least, or sitting when you greet, just because
No, it's mine.
you want them to not be clawing people's legs and knocking people down. And are there any questions about that? Chat? I don't have the chat open, so if people are asking questions in the chat, I can't see it right now, but we can go to the next slide. So mouthing and growling, sometimes people really worry about growling, tugging, mouthing. All of these things are normal dog behavior. Dogs explore things with their mouths just like babies, because they don't have hands. So they put their mouths on things and feel them and touch them. And it's important for us to teach them what is okay to mouth and to grab. And, you know, even if they do, if you do, you can, it is okay to play mouthy games with your dog. I would not with a foster dog, because you don't want to teach that that's okay unless the new home is going to be happy with that. So for foster dogs, I would replace your hands, your arms, your feet, anything that they're chasing and grabbing, with toys, with a tug toy or a ball or something that they're interested in playing with. Toss and fetch is great. It's okay to play tug. Just make sure that you play tug with rules. The tug belongs to you. They cannot climb up the tug and grab your hands and arms. If they're doing that, we're not going to play. That tug is going to get put away, and you may end up going into another part of the house, you know, into your crate, into your pen, behind a baby gate for a little bit of timeout with a chew toy. And sometimes you will see that they get really mouthy and really overexcited when they're overstimulated and overtired. So again, like toddler children, if they've been playing for a long time, if they're getting overexcited and it just seems to be amping up and up and up, and you cannot seem to get them to calm down, that's usually because they're overstimulated and overtired and they need a nap. So that would be a great time to do a timeout. You know, don't be angry, don't treat them like, you know, they're in trouble. It's just, you're way too tired, you're going to go take a nap. I'm going to give you this chewy and you're going to go to bed for 15-20 minutes. Typically they fall right to sleep and sleep for an hour, but just to make sure. We should always have appropriate chews available. Chewing is a stress reliever for dogs. So if you have a dog that likes to chew on things and, you know, finds himself chewing on your hands or your arms or doing the grooming, like eating your arm like a corn cob, you can give them something else to chew on. And there are all kinds of things that you can give them. Some dogs like harder things like knuckle bones or shin bones. Some dogs like antlers. Some dogs like go nuts, which are a little chewier and more rubbery. They're pretty tough, so even for the hard chewers, they can be a really good choice. And you know, have a variety of things, and you can swap them out every couple of days so that it's all new and exciting. You know, and if you put something on top of the refrigerator and bring it back 2 days later, it's new and exciting, even if it's the same toy they've seen twice this week. So giving them things, fun things to chew on all the time. And if you're getting grabbing toy in the mouth, we're going to play toys instead. Don't eat my hands. All right, next slide. Pulling on the leash. This is a very common problem with foster dogs, with shelter dogs, with owned dogs, with dogs who've been in homes for years and years. And, you know, a lot of the time the dogs are really excited by things in the environment, which is understandable, particularly things like squirrels and rabbits and really good smells. And loose leash walking, I mean, the thing that I'm always telling people is that loose leash walking is a team sport. It's like pair dancing. You both have to be engaged in order for it to work. So it's really important to make sure that the dog is paying attention to you. And no, you don't have to be more fun than a squirrel, because that's really hard. What we do is we're going to work on being more fun than a squirrel inside the house where there are no squirrels first. We're going to teach them, to walk on the leash, watch us a little bit, do a bunch of different kind of exercises in an enclosed area where you're not dependent on the leash. And a lot of the time when dogs are out at the end of the leash, they have that pressure. They know you're right there. So they don't need to worry about watching you or where you are. So if you get the leash to where it's loose, we're going to treat for loose leash all the time. And you can just put your treat bag right next to your hip and treat straight down your leg to the dog. Even if they're starting to get out toward the end of the leash, say yes or good or whatever words you want to use, or you can use your clicker if you have one, and then have them come back to you for the treat in that position. So we're gonna click or give your cue, give your reinforcer for being where you want them to be with the loose leash, and then when they're next to you is when the treat is going to come. And you can do things inside even without a leash. So practice some loose leash walking in the house, which will be very surprising to the dog, and they probably will find it really interesting. They'll be like, wait a minute, I'm getting snacks for walking around the house next to you? Okay, great. and the more that we build that information that you get snacks for being in this position, good things happen when you're right here. If you pay attention to me, then you'll get snacks. And just, you can be very surprising about it. It doesn't have to be all the time. It can be every once in a while, and they'll be like, oh, wow, well, that was interesting. Maybe I'll look at her again. So getting them excited about being in the position next to you is the first step. And then you can practice things like take one step and treat, take one step and treat, take one step and treat. And they'll be like, oh, okay, so if I'm right here next to you and I stay right here next to you, I'll keep getting treats. And then when they're out in front of you, just ignore that, because that's not going to get them anything. You can stop, or you can turn and go the other direction. Crazy walking is a really fun thing to do with them as well. So when you're out for a walk and they're just kind of lollygagging or, looking at other stuff or sniffing away, you can just turn and start walking the other direction, and they'll be like, oh, wait, what are you doing? Where are you going? And when they catch up, give them that treat. So always make it worth their while to catch up with you and be next to you. And you can practice with cones. You can set out cones, or you can practice with trees or, sidewalk cracks, and give a treat at every sidewalk crack, give a treat at every tree you pass. Just anything that's going to kind of give a rhythm to it, but they aren't going to understand what the rhythm is. So it'll keep that interesting for them. And of course, sniffy walks are super important too. So if you have like a longer lead and you let them sniff and explore, that's also a good exercise for them. And you can say, go sniff, and let them sniff for a while. And then when you call them back to you, you can work on some loose leash walking. But sniffing is really good exercise for dogs. It's a good mental exercise. It tires them out probably faster than walking and running around. So, because they're using so much of their brain when they're doing that. So sniffy walks are great, but if you really would like to protect your rotator cuffs, they are kind of important. We want to make sure that you've got that attention and that it's worth their while to pay attention to you when you're walking. Get that teamwork going. And I can give you some more information about that too, if you have a dog who's pulling and dragging you everywhere. All right, next slide. Leash reactivity with dogs and people. So we'll see a lot of dogs who are leash reactive toward dogs, and some that are also leash reactive toward people. And there are many different reasons that this can happen. It sometimes happens when dogs are in an invisible fence because they see a person, they get excited, they get to the edge of the fence, they get shocked. So when people show up, it's indicating things are bad, people are bad, we want them to go away. And it can happen because they really feel when they're on a leash that they don't have that option of flight. So their natural responses to things that they're concerned about, or even new things, because dogs typically are concerned about everything new, even if they're pretty social and pretty well adjusted. Since we have removed their option of flight or freeze when they're on a leash, they feel like they have to be with you and walking, and they don't have that option of running away. So a lot of dogs will immediately default to, I got to chase that scary thing away because I can't run away, so I'm going to scare him off. And this is why we want to really work hard to get them comfortable and make experiences with new people and dogs positive for them. So if we're on a leash and they're barking at a dog across the street from you, or up the street, or a person walking by, we're going to have them look at the animal. We'll say, oh, look, there's a dog. Here, come have a treat. Let's walk away. Let's go the other way. And teach them that they do have the option to go away, and that they have the option to ask us to take them away. So when they see another animal, first we're just going to say, look, a dog, and treat. And they'll look at the dog. Then you will notice after just a few times probably that when they see another dog, they're going to look at the dog, then they're going to look at you because you've been giving them a treat every time they see a dog. So they're going to look at you and say, where's my treat and what are we doing? And then we're going to start treating for the look back at you. So they'll look back at you, we'll treat, we'll move away. And when we treat and move away, they're getting reinforced twice for looking at you and looking away from the dog. Because what they want to do is make some space. They want distance. They want to increase distance between them and the scary object, whatever it might be. And you're giving them a treat as well. So it's like double duty good stuff. And yeah, they just are worried about those things. And what happens is we tend to do things like, we know they're going to bark. So we tense up and grab the leash and then yank and run away. Or yell at them or say, stop that, don't do that. And then they're like, well, gosh, I see a dog and I get in trouble and it's not fun. So of course I'm going to want that dog to go away. And then they start barking even sooner. So we really have to rebuild that whole scenario. And you can even practice like pulling on the leash, and like you would if you got nervous about a dog being around, and giving a treat. Practice that at home. I'm just going to tighten up on the leash because it's really hard for us to change our behavior and our responses. We're actually better at changing the responses of the dogs than we are. Teach them that our response is a positive thing instead of that they need to be on guard as well. That can really help a lot. All right, next slide. More on leash reactivity. So body language. We're going to watch the dog and see what is happening before that reaction. And it's often really quick. So as soon as you see a dog or a person at a long distance where the dog isn't really responding, that's when you want to first start doing U-turns and running away. If they can see the animal or the person and they're not barking yet, that's when you want to catch that and say, oh, let's go, let's run away, let's practice. And you'll find that you can get closer and closer by moving away, which seems very counterintuitive. If they don't have to go on leash walks, practice at home, practice all these things inside, and don't even take them out on the leash until you feel comfortable that you have enough of their attention and are able to handle them around other animals or people. Watch their body language. If their ears are coming forward and their tails are going straight up, if they're stiffening up, that's when you're going to get a response. That's when you're going to get that. Brrr. So as you see them start to stiffen up, that's when we're going to like put on our Minnie Mouse voice and say, oh, come on, let's go run away. And because this is not a scary situation and we're not going to let it become one. So that's when you want to watch and make sure that you're not, having them blast off all the time. You don't want them to practice that behavior, because if they think they're chasing everybody away, then that's reinforcing as well. So we will work on doing a U-turn real quick, saying, hey, run away, we're going to run away. You can treat and retreat. So you can give a treat, then run away, give another treat. You can practice your look at that. And you can also practice engage and disengage games. So like say, look at that. Okay, look at me. Look at that. Look at me. Look at that. Look at me. And everybody gets treated for each thing that they do. So that makes it fun to look and fun to look away. So they don't get fixated and start stiffening up and being worried. All right, next slide. Learning to settle down. This is a very big piece for a lot of dogs. Some of them just seem like they're perpetual. They just go and go and go and don't know how to settle down. Particularly if they've been, either outdoor dogs or they've been in a small kennel for a long time and they don't, it's like they're loose and they don't know what to do with themselves. So starting with putting them in a smaller space and getting them comfortable in a small space so they don't have the entire house to run rampant in like crazy dogs. Putting them in an X pen with some chews and toys, playing tug with them, playing brain games with them, like hiding treats around the house and having them sniff them out, hiding treats in even like wadded up paper or a wadded up blanket or a fleece. You can take a holy roller ball and put like just strips of fleece fabric in there and let them pull them back out. That can keep dogs very busy for a long time. And it's pretty cheap and pretty reusable. You can put some treats in and roll them up and shove them into the holy roller. You can work on all kinds of brain games, training stuff. I mean, for dogs, all training is games. So, when you're engaging with them and doing training things, to them, that's playing with them. So they're working their brains and working their bodies and getting to spend bonding time with you. Just make it fun for everybody. And teaching tricks is a really great way to bond with dogs and to get them focused so that they're not just running around like crazies and they're, stopping to think and use their brains. Teaching them to settle on a mat. And one of the ways that you can do that is I really like to take just like an old towel and practice settling on that, because then if you want to go to the park or to a restaurant or whatever, you can just plop it down, have the dog settle there. They're like, oh, that's my mat. When that's here, I lay down on it. And it's really easy to start with that just by putting it out when you're sitting somewhere and practicing giving treats for them showing up on the mat. And then pick it up when you're not there. So it'll be super valuable. And when they see it, they'll be like, oh, this is a great place to lay down because good stuff shows up. And then when you take them somewhere, you can take them and give them a chew or something that's a little longer lasting on your mat and let them hang out. Having them settle on their side. Some dogs will lay down and they'll be like, oh, I'm ready to pop right up. If you can pet them a little bit, get them to relax and lay all the way on their side, that really can help calm them down. And you can just kind of give them some treats really quietly right at their nose as they're laying down, and lots of smooth, slow stroking, lots of slow petting really helps to calm them down. And practicing all of that will make your veterinarian super happy too, and groomers. If you can get them to settle so that you can do nails and look in their ears and listen to their heart and all of that, they would love that. Tethering to a person or a piece of furniture. Commercials training is something that I used to do a lot with my clients and my puppy classes. basically, if you're sitting down to like watch TV, and I know most TV doesn't really have commercials anymore, but it used to be that, there would be commercials, and during that little break, we would do some training. And then when everybody settled down to watch TV again, we would have them settle on their mat, get some treats right next to you. They can lay right on the floor next to you on the couch, whatever you prefer. Have them calm down and settle down, and then 20 minutes or whatever, do 3 minutes of training, have them settle back down. And that works out really well, I think, for a lot of dogs and for a lot of people. It really helps to fit training into your life, because 10 minutes is plenty of time, especially if you can do a couple times a day. Do 10 minutes of training at meal times. It's easier for the dogs to really kind of understand and not get bored and not get frustrated with a short period. And it's certainly easier for people to make that fit. If you practice when you're going out the door, you practice when you're feeding dinner and breakfast, practice when you're watching TV, practice when you're doing other things. If you're on a Zoom call, you can have the dog sit next to you and get some treats, calm down, because it's a really hard thing for them to learn for a lot of dogs. Settling down and doing nothing is not really something that they're super excited and thrilled about. It doesn't seem like doing something to them. So teaching them to settle down and calm down when you ask them to is a really big thing. Next slide. When are timeouts okay? So timeouts, people ask about timeouts a lot. And I think it depends. It really depends on how you structure the timeout, what your behavior and reaction is during or just prior to the timeout. If they're overstimulated and they're just grabbing and biting at you, jumping all over, acting crazy, if you know that they're overtired, if they've been doing a whole lot of play, or been outside for a while and they come in and they're just really hyped up and you cannot get them to calm down, it is perfectly fine to give the dog a timeout. What you don't want to do is wait until you're angry. And it's better to catch them, say, okay, this dog is out of control, so this dog needs to take a nap. And just pick them up carefully, gently, or lure them into their kennel area or their crate or their X pen, whatever space you're planning to put them in for timeout. Give them something to chew on and just walk away. It's not punishment, it's just time away so that they can settle down, get control of themselves. Sometimes so that we can settle down, get control of ourselves. It can be, and I would say probably the biggest time of day when you want to do timeout is just go ahead and put the dogs in their crates when you're making food, when you're making dinner. That seems to be the witching hour for many, many dogs, and especially puppies. It's everyone's gotten home from work, or everyone's stopped doing work and is focusing on getting back into the house, making food. And there's really not, and the dogs are excited because everybody's home. So get them out, let them do their little run around, but then don't feel bad about putting them back into their resting areas while you're making food, when you do not have time to focus on training and working with them, because it seems that is always when they are the most obnoxious. They seem to want to run around like crazy, or they're all up in your face while you're trying to make food, or they're running through the house grabbing things and acting crazy in other parts of the house because they know that you're not able to come chase them. So don't feel bad about putting them into their sleeping space or their timeout space when you are occupied with something like dinner. And that is perfectly fine. No guilt there, because you're going to let them back out. You're not putting them away forever. Even if you just got home and they just got to run around, it's okay. It's okay to put them back and then let them out again. Next slide. Questions. That is the cutest. Here we go. How do we do timeouts that aren't punishing? So extra great, crate only, or pen only chews, something that they only get when they're in there. And really, if you want to prepare their meals and put them in a frozen Kong or a puzzle toy or something like that, put them in when you eat dinner, give them their puzzle toy, let them do that, and then let them out after that. That's fine. Be sure that the dog has pottied and eaten and whatever else that they need to do. If they're acting crazy because they need to go outside and go to the bathroom, get that done, then put them in for some time out. Don't get angry. That's really easy for me to say. It's really hard for everyone, including me, to do. It's always important to, I've had dogs who have run through the house, dragging toilet paper everywhere like maniacs, and kids running around at the same time. And it's really easy to be like, oh, but try and just take a deep breath, do the timeout, go scream in another room. Try not to get angry at the dog and make them think that, you don't want them to think that you're being punitive by putting them in their timeout space, because we're just giving them some time to chill, and ourselves. And yeah, put them gently into their space with some goodies. If they have not settled down in about 10 minutes, some dogs will bark and whine, but if they're panicking, you'll be able to tell if they're screaming or digging, trying to get out of the crate, or likely to injure themselves. Then you want to go back and check on them, see what's going on, make some contact, connect with them, say, hey, you're okay. You're okay. Let's settle down, have this chewy, settle down, give them a second to settle, and then move away again and come back in a few minutes. Because if they're panicking, you don't want them in the crate panicking. But most dogs, if they're really overstimulated or they're really tired and acting obnoxious because they're just so wound up, they'll usually start chewing on whatever you give them to chew and fall right to sleep. And then you can come and get them out when you're feeling better about things and they're feeling better about things, and start again. Okay. Then we'll move on to questions. And do we have questions? I don't see any in the chat.
Oops, sorry. I keep moving my cursor trying to get to the chat, and so none in the chat right now. So feel free to put questions in the chat, but you can Tia's got one. All right, let's go to you and go ahead and talk to us.
I've been told that when you get back after an absence, they're super excited to see you, and you're trying to teach them 4 on the floor. One piece of advice I've heard is kind of ignore them. And that always seems so rude to me. At least, hi, I'm glad to see you too, kind of calmly. But can you talk about ignoring them when you get back? Because it just seems mean if you're in a relationship.
It is really hard. It's hard to discern. Because you want to greet them too. You're excited to see them too. But if we want that kind of calm behavior, and particularly for dogs who have any kind of separation issues, it is kind of important to come in, walk around a little bit, and it doesn't have to be for very long. Like walk into the kitchen, go to the bathroom, whatever, and then you can go and greet them. And calm greetings, it doesn't have to be, oh my God, because for them it's like, I haven't seen you in forever, you've been gone for years. But you don't have to respond with that greeting. You can be like, hi, I'm back, it's really nice to see you, maybe you would like to go outside. But calm greetings. And it's fine to come in and just walk around a little bit first, so that they don't internalize that they need to be let out and have a big party with you every time you walk through the door. But yeah, dog manners and people manners, it's hard because we don't like to be rude, and we like to greet them too. So.
Cinder, there's a question in the chat. It says on one of your first slides, you mentioned sit and 4. What is the 4? Probably your 4 on the floor, yeah.
Yep, 4 on the floor. So you can ask dogs to sit But sometimes it's easier, especially like for big dogs or older dogs. And sometimes for really short dogs, because they want to make contact and they're so small already. If you just ask for 4 on the floor, all 4 feet on the floor, then you get my attention. Yep. And sometimes those front feet are dancing quite a bit. So you can count that. If they're not up on you, if they're just dancing a little bit, that's okay. Some dogs get really happy to see you and dance a lot. See, cones were mentioned on the leash pulling slide. Yeah, so I often will set up cones, like little soccer cones, for practicing loose leash walking stuff, because humans, we find it really reinforcing for them to be with us, so we don't always remember to reinforce before things fall apart. So to remind myself to maybe, treat every 2 steps or every 3 steps, we kind of just spread them out and then work to having them further and further apart. And it's just to give myself a prompt. Anything else?
Great. Other things? Oh, here we go. Do we need to be concerned about the number of treats we're giving when leash training? Good question.
Both yes and no. So one of the things that I will do, particularly when first starting out, when I'm giving tons and tons of treats, I will take maybe a quarter or a half of their meal and microwave it with a chunk of hot dog. Then everything smells like hot dog. So they're just getting their dog food, but it smells like hot dogs, so they think it's better. And give small treats. I mean, I will cut a cheese stick into 100 tiny pieces that are like the size of my pinky nail, and just give the tiny pieces. But yeah, it's fine to use their meals to do that as well.
Dolores says carrots work too, although I'll say in my experience, it really depends on the dog. My own personal dog, carrots are of no interest to her. So it's going to vary, I think.
Yep, it's very dependent on the dog. I have one dog who really likes Trader Joe's banana chips. I have one dog who will immediately eject them from his mouth if you give them to him. He's like, ew, ick. But it's really, the learner gets to decide what's reinforcing for them. So trying to find things that they really like and then kind of mixing those in with stuff that's good for them.
Cinder, in thinking about the, actually, let's answer this question first. On chewing, can you say something about which bones are safe or not for bigger dogs? Good question.
That is a good question. And again, that depends somewhat on the dog. Some dogs are very delicate chewers and are really careful with everything. But for larger dogs, I tend to go with like the big knuckle bones or bully sticks or the shin bones, just because they're bigger and less likely to be a problem. And the extra large nyla bones, the big Kong bones can be, if they don't chew pieces off and swallow them.
I found with rib bones, my dog will literally just eat them. And at some point I take it away because I think it's an awful lot of bone for a not so big dog. I don't know if that's a common thing or.
Yeah, my Aussie was always bad about that. He would just crunch. And so he always got the really big, giant bone just because I didn't want him crunching it apart and swallowing it.
Even those femurs get razor sharp on the ends.
They do. Yeah. Yes, they do. I know. It's like, is this a shiv? You going to use this to escape or what?
And nyla bones get wicked when they've been really chewed and chomped on the ends. You touch them, they're like, whoa, how is this not hurting my dog? But
yeah, nyla bones and bena bones, and stepping on those in the middle of the night, I do not recommend it. They're like the Legos of the dog world.
So another question here in the chat, and since we're a smallish group, feel free to ask yourself if you want, but I'll just read this one. What advice do you have for calming an anxious dog our adoptee can can withdraw very easily when our boys are around or she's in a new environment.
Okay. So she gets really, she just doesn't respond, or is
She,
it,
how would you say she responds, love? She gets very anxious and her tail goes between her legs and she just sort of pulls back and she's just very uncertain. So this is particular when we're on a walk or when we have someone come over to the house or when our boys first come home from school, and she's just a very anxious dog if there's anything that is not just so.
okay. Yeah, I would give her the opportunity to move away. You know, if she wants to run and hide when everybody gets home from school, that's fine. Let her do that. And she can come out when she feels like things have settled down a little bit. With meeting new people and being out on walks, is it specifically when there are people around or dogs or just in new places?
So with her walks, she seems to be better because we're practicing more. But when we would go on a walk, we couldn't even get her to take a treat because she was so anxious and wound up. We haven't been able to get her to sit. So it's like we'll be trying to get her to sit and she gets so confused and she gets so anxious and then she just sort of shuts down. Not like she doesn't lay down, but she winds herself up and then she's just kind of stuck in her head, right? And we don't know how to get her to not amp up to that level of anxious, and we don't know how to break her out of that anxious when she's there.
Okay. I would start by don't even work on the sit right now. Just work on the walking piece and, work more on connecting with her on the walk, getting her to pay attention to you when she's walking. And when you see other things that are kind of scary, practice the moving away and treating for that and looking at things and treating for that. And you can get to the sit later.
I think that was a really interesting idea that I had not heard about before, is giving the treat and walking away.
Mm-hmm.
I had always been told, you can't reward them when they're sort of getting upset or when they're acting out. So I think that's really interesting. I'm keen to give that a try. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And you're not reinforcing the behavior that you don't want. You're just getting their attention off of that object and reinforcing the other behavior of moving away. So, and looking is okay. We want them to look. We just don't want them to then fire off and like chase and lunge. So looking is okay. Because I mean, if somebody's walking really close behind me, I'm going to turn and look. So to let them feel more comfortable, you do want to let them observe the whole environment and feel okay about that. But then it's okay for them to look at you and move away. And Dolores, did you ask? Yes, would shorter walks help? They might. It just depends. Walks in, as they become more comfortable in specific areas, sometimes a shorter walk in that space where the dog is already comfortable can be really helpful. And then, kind of adventuring more, maybe another block or 2 blocks, or, slowly acclimating to doing new exciting things.
Cinder, I have a question about the slide about dog reactivity. And is there a distinction between, I mean, you kind of referenced dogs that get excited, maybe they're scared, they want to run away, so they kind of take offense, and you just kind of get them away. I mean, is there a meaningful distinction of that versus I actually want to go pick a fight, or I want to be dominant, or would you respond differently? I've had a lot of reactive dogs, and some clearly it was kind of I'm going to get ahead of my fear. Some cases I'm not sure, and maybe it doesn't matter, but can you say anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, for some dogs, if it is just aggression, and you've seen aggression toward dogs in other situations, if they will fight with a dog in a play situation, if they cannot get along with any other dogs, then I would be more concerned about aggression, and we might handle that a little bit differently. But pretty much the same rules would apply, because really what you want to do is build that relationship with you so that they are focusing back on you and asking you what they should be doing next, instead of making that decision to go attack or whatever they want to do from there. And typically with dogs who are aggressive, punishing that is not going to change that behavior either, and may exacerbate as well. So.
Yeah, this is helpful. My last foster was a 90-pound, big, giant, sort of lap dog. He was just adopted a few weeks ago, and I thought about inviting the adopter really to be on this, because he was very submissive to my personal dog, to a small former foster who stayed with. Literally, he would hide behind me for these much smaller dogs. He loved puppies. But sometimes when we were walking, and I really think it was it was a fear thing. He would see a dog at a medium distance and kind of be like, "Roar."
Yeah.
And so I did avoid, but the closer we got, the more kind of agitated he got. And yet, in our house with another dog, he was literally like, he'd let them take his bone. I mean, I tried to avoid that happening, but he was completely submissive. But he would get really fixated outside and kind of worried. And so I'm concerned about the adopter who's, a lot smaller than me with a big dog. And I gave her some advice on this, but I definitely want to pass on more to just not have that kind of go bad, because I think he is afraid, but he's so strong. I mean, those behaviors in a 15-pound dog would be like, whatever, dog barks, we walk away. This dog can drag you, and that's what makes it challenging. So, I suggest to get the right equipment, get leashes, the no pull leashes and all that.
Excellent.
It was
rules and lots of practice at home with, we're walking, this is how we're doing it. We're a team. You're going to ask me before you make any choices.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do just sorry to I'll monopolize this for a minute, because with him too, he was not super excitable, but when he got out there and was either happy or, he didn't pull too much, but I had a hard time getting his attention, and he wasn't that treat motivated. So of course I could have done more inside. I only had him for a few weeks. So,
Right.
But it was sometimes with the dogs that just, keeping their attention when there's a lot else out there is challenging. Is there anything other than just practice to work on that?
That is a really hard piece. I mean, the environment can be super overstimulating and super exciting for them. And there's really no way that we can be more interesting than that. So building that relationship just so that it's a habit for them to, if you say, oh, look, they're going to look immediately and not even think about going to chase the squirrel. There's also something called the Premack principle that you can use. It's David Premack is a researcher, and he did this study on reinforcement. And one of the things that I will do sometimes with my dogs is they look at a squirrel, I ask them to look at me, and we reinforce by chasing what they want. We'll go and run after the squirrel. And so every once in a while, if you get what you wanted because you did what I asked, and it's even better than a treat, that can be extremely reinforcing. So having the opportunity and knowing that there might be somewhere along the line the chance to go chase something, or the chance to run away, or whatever it is that they're looking for as that primary reinforcer, can be really helpful in strengthening them.
Tia, your comment here is interesting. Can you say a little bit more about the Control Unleashed Conditioned Emotional Response School of Thought? What is that? And because it sounds intriguing.
We tried many different things with very good professional people, but different schools of thought. It's like, do we raise the kid Catholic or Jewish? Either way, we have children. You got to find what works for you.
Yep.
But we had months to do it, and he sent us to the ER. He's big and strong. He knocked me off my feet. He's big and strong.
Yep.
But this is all the kind of stuff that Cinder is talking about.
Yeah, I love Leslie. She's great.
Yeah, so maybe Cinder, you address it instead and just say who Leslie McDevitt is and how it works, because it's been transformative for us.
Leslie McDevitt is a trainer, and she put together Control Unleashed, which is a way of, she has protocols for building that conditioned emotional response so that the dogs in that moment, it's a habit that they look at you or that they do whatever. And she has a whole series of pattern games that you can play with dogs, which are just amazing, get amazing results. And yeah, and her book Control Unleashed is great. She has a Control Unleashed puppy book now, and she has her pattern games. I think she's got the book and the DVD set out, and they're definitely really great. Yeah, and Karen Overall's relaxation protocol. Dr. Karen Overall is a vet behaviorist, and she put together a relaxation protocol for teaching dogs specifically to relax. It's very regimented, and there is, I can't remember who put it together, but there is an audio version, so you can put on the audio and listen while you go through the steps, which is super helpful. And it's very, very tiny increments, so you really get all of that done, and it just works out really well. Oh yeah, and YouTube for the 14-day cycle. Yep.
I'll just interject that
Yes.
the idea of emotional control in one area of the life spilled over into the other stuff, and I didn't believe it until I saw it. So learning to relax on the mat that you were talking about and all those things, it doesn't mean that they won't lunge for a squirrel necessarily, but 3 out of 5 instead of 5 out of 5, or not as loud or shorter or getting calmer sooner. It spilled over when they got control in one area to another. It was,
Yeah.
has been
Yeah.
great.
I mean, you know, they're still going to be dogs. They're still going to do dog things, but they're definitely that whole learning some self-control, learning how to, you know, when they get that headspace of understanding what you're looking for and where they need to be with it, then it does spill over into all the other behavioral stuff that you're doing with them. It's really great. I really
Great. Well, we're actually right about time, and I think we've at least addressed all the questions we knew about. So any final thoughts from anyone? Anything they desperately need? And of course, as most of you know, I think you can reach out to our training team, of which Cinder is a key part of, at training@ophrescue.org, to get individual sort of advice from Cinder. So I guess we'll wind up there. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thanks, Cinder. I'm glad the technology worked today. Went pretty smoothly. So thanks, everybody. And we will continue to have these calls probably about monthly, I think. So keep your eye out for upcoming ones. And I'm going to stop the recording.